You've got to have a very specialized type of detection to see the fire, because by the time your normal detector has seen or supposedly seen your source of ignition, your glowing ember, your smoke, it's gone.
Welcome to Talking Fire with the Fire Detection Industry Association. Today's topic is slightly new in terms of what we have covered before, but I think it's really relevant, and it's a sector that we need to focus on a bit more. I think in light, or should we say in lack of light, with all the load shedding that's happening, it was all over the newspaper with regards to the conveyor belt fire that one of the power stations had. And I think conveyor belts are important that they do get protected, but there's obviously a lot more involved. They're not governed by the usual South African national standards. They don't fall under 10139 or under 369. There's a variety of international standards that we used. Obviously, there's a few factors. There's a lot more factors that need to be brought into the design. So I'm going to pass over to you, Clive. Obviously, we're talking about an Eskom belt, which is coal, which at that point we are obviously protecting the product.
Yep.
However, there are some belts where we are not protecting the product. For example, on a gold mine, it's ore, and rocks are not really going to spontaneously combust in the same way that coal will. In your experience, detection-wise, I think we're going to focus on detection predominantly, although we are aware that they do get connected to deluge systems and sprinkler systems. But I think that's a whole different video or a whole different agenda completely. In your experience, what type of detection have you used, and how do the systems operate?
Yeah, so like you say, there's two ways of looking at the scenario. So you got the protecting the product on the belt or protecting the belt itself. And if we get to the point where rocks start combusting, then that will just follow on from 2020, 21, and so on. That's what we would expect these days. The types of detection. So it depends on what you're protecting. What we have seen and what we've done in the past is, let's look at protecting the product. So if you look at a conveyor belt, you've got a flammable product of some sort moving on the belt, and it's going at a speed, typically 5 meters per second. So some of these belts move very quickly. You've got to have a very specialized type of detection to see the fire, because by the time your normal detector has seen or supposedly seen your source of ignition, your glowing ember, your smoke, it's gone. So you get specialized types of detection now. You get infrareds, ultraviolet infrareds. Another thing that you've got to look at is keeping the lens of these detectors clean. So they normally come with an air purge system. When you're doing the installation, you've got to allow for air, you've got to allow for instrumentation and all that kind of thing to keep the detector in a workable condition. Your maintenance on it's going to be a lot more because it's a dirty environment. Conveyor belts as such are dirty. Typically, and every system or every scenario would have to be designed specifically looking at the risk. But typically what you would do is you'd have a moving ember detector of some sort, senses the heat source going past. That would then shut your conveyor down and then give the more normal detectors a chance to see the fire as such. So got a conveyor, your unit goes whizzing past, the infrared or the moving ember detector shuts down the conveyor, and then you've got other infrared source detectors looking at it. And remember your cone of vision on your infrared to be able to see where the fire is. From here, you would then connect it onto a suppression system of some sort. And like I said, before the video started, we were discussing it, and already we don't agree. So there's a lot of ways to look at this scenario. If you're going to protect the belt, then you're going to look at different sources of ignition. What we found typically is your transfer houses, your motors, and that's where your source of ignition is going to be, because the conveyor is just whizzing along with chunks of rock on it. Bearings on the idler gears start overheating, seizing or overheating. Your motor that's driving it causes a fire because it's not been maintained properly. And there you could look at linear heat detection around the various conveyor idlers and so on, infrared looking at your motors. So it's a vast array of different ways of looking at a very complicated problem.
I think it's quite relevant, and obviously the reason for the Eskom fire that we started this video discussing is undisclosed, or maybe I haven't read into it enough. But as you mentioned, obviously things like, coal obviously spontaneously combusts, which is always a problem. People have discussed transporting coal wet. And I think the big risk is once again, you'll be talking about transfer belt, transfer chutes and all that kind of stuff. And wherever coal does transfer from one conveyor belt to the next conveyor belt, it's important not to transfer that. Specifically, you don't want to stockpile the coal with a burning ember at some point. So all those things need to be taken into account. Shutdown speeds of a belt. So I mean, on a transfer belt, you don't want to put your detector 2 meters before the transfer point. If your belt is running at 5 meters a second and it takes your belt 3 seconds to shut down, you need at least 15 meters in order to contain that fire on the belt or understand where that fire is.
Yeah, before it actually goes into the silo where you've got tons of coal sitting there, and then that all goes. Yeah.
So I think I think obviously with load shedding and stuff like that, this topic has become relevant, and I think it is something that the Fire Detection Industry Association is going to look at in a lot more detail and share a lot more information. So once again, we encourage anybody involved with conveyor belts in the industrial sector in general to reach out and contact us, share information with us. We're also learning, as we said. Before we filmed this video, we were discussing the various suppression options, and already we had a slight difference of opinion. So we'd like people to reach out, check our website, send us emails, and let's educate as many people as we can, specifically the end users, the likes of Eskom. They need to understand what their belts do require and how to prevent losing their main coal conveyor, feeder belt. Especially when you're the topic of every newspaper, preventative maintenance, correct detection systems, correct suppression systems are imperative for business continuity. And that is, I think, the goal of many industrial companies. So please reach out, www.fdia.co.za. All our contact details are on there. Please forward us any information or any information that you would like to learn about, or any topics of discussion.